hospice nurse, end-of-life educator, and author Beth Cavanaugh is with us today to talk about her hospice journey, her passion for end-of-life care, and her book, Some Light at the End. You're connected with the Heart of Hospice. I'm Helen Bauer here with Jerry Finter.
Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, we're here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care. We'd like to thank today's sponsor, Funeralocity.com. It's hard to think about researching funeral homes when you're faced with the loss of a loved one. Funeralocity can help. At no cost to you, Funeralocity gives you the ability to compare the prices and services of every funeral home and cremation provider in your area and provide you with vast resources to assist in the funeral planning process. Find out more at Funeralocity.com.
Our guest today is one of my people.
She's a hospice RN. And certainly one of your peeps.
She definitely is. Beth Cavanaugh is with us today. She is a hospice and palliative care certified RN. Yay! Certified nurses. Kudos to you guys. She's also an end-of-life educator, and she's got a book, Some Light at the End.
She has such a quality about her. I'm so intrigued by her way of entering in with people and connecting with them.
Yes.
It's really, really fascinating, I think, how she does that, because she's worked in so many different areas in not only as in healthcare, but in hospice as well.
Yes. Inpatient unit.
Right.
And then what did she say? Hospice home.
Hospice home. And then she's also been a liaison, actually working, meeting with families before they come on hospice.
And she's been on the business side of hospice as well. So
right.
We didn't talk so much about that. It was more about the clinical side. She's got 15 years experience in, which is a lot, but she's got some great stories to tell, and she's going to share some of that with us. So here is our conversation with Beth Cavanaugh.
Beth, we're so glad to have you on the Heart of Hospice. Welcome to our little corner of the world.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you both today.
I feel a little bit outnumbered. I mean,
that's right.
Two nurses and me. So
that's too bad. Yeah, Beth is one of my peeps.
I am one of your peeps. Don't worry. We'll be gentle.
And not only is she a nurse, she's also a hospice nurse. So, Beth, tell us about your hospice nursing career and how did you find your way to end-of-life care?
I never really even contemplated nursing until after college. I was a poli-sci major, and I did this program called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and it was in Washington. And I worked in nursing homes for a year, and I did mental health therapy, and we would drive patients around to ostrich farms and Dairy Queen and bakeries. And I was the white knuckled van driver. And I was also, I was the assistant. So I did whatever they needed me to do. But it was the first time I had really spent significant time with octogenarians, and they were just so wonderfully kind of wild and free in such a funny way. And I remember one patient, her name was Grace, but I'm making up her name, for HIPAA stuff.
Sure.
She told me, she said, when I die, I'm going to be cremated. It'll be the first time I've ever been warm enough in my life. And I was like, So, they just did the weirdest, funniest things, but they were so kind of raw and real. And I loved being around just that population. And so I ended up going into nursing. I went back to school after that year and got my nursing degree. And my mom, she got diagnosed with lung cancer like 2 years after I graduated from nursing school. And so I went down to California and I took care of her for the last 3 months of her life. I was with my siblings and I brought my 1-year-old son down, and my dad was there too, taking care of her. But as a nurse, I mean, nobody else in our family is a medical professional. So I was definitely the one who was in charge of the medications, the showering, the bathing, the pooping, all those intimate details of taking care of somebody at the end of their life. And it was a really profound experience. I mean, one that I'll never regret. And I was with her when she died, and that was a really kind of holy, profound moment for me as well. And that was in 1998. And I was, I just will never, ever forget it and how special it was, that time with her. I'm
sorry. So was your mom on hospice?
Yeah, she did go on hospice. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she survived 15 months. She went on chemo and radiation. And then the last 3 months of her life is when she was on hospice. So, I mean, that's the biggest reason I think that I went into end of life care, is because I had my own personal experience with it. And it was difficult and challenging and heart-wrenching and wonderful and special and holy. It just felt like everything. So I really feel lucky that I can be in end-of-life care and be a nurse, because it feels it's a really, as you guys know, vulnerable time for people. And you just want to have someone in the room that feels lucky and honored and that can kind of handle it, I guess.
Yeah. So how long have you been in hospice now? How long have you been working in hospice?
About 15 years.
Oh, well, she's been in it longer than you and I.
I knew you were going to say that.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, I think everybody has their own ride with it. So,
yeah. Well, and it's an amazing way. I love the way you describe it. You say lucky. You say lucky. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you're blessed enough to be able to work in this industry, because for me, it was a total stumble in. I was just looking for a job, had no idea the depth and intensity of the kind of care that we provide, the experiences that we get on the providing side of things. To hear the word lucky, I think that's absolutely accurate. I think a lot of hospice people would say that about the fact that they're able to work with people who are at end of life.
Right. I hear a lot of people who work in hospice say that this is their calling, that they've really found their place in this. And I'm very much the same way. I was not looking to go into hospice. I'd even had someone tell me, "Oh, you would make a great hospice chaplain." I'm like, I will never do that. A month later, I was working in hospice. So,
what?
Yeah, it really was that quick. And now I've been in it for 11 years. So calling is definitely one of the things. So would you say that about yourself, that you feel like that hospice end-of-life care is a calling for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt pulled by my heart. I actually sought out a spiritual director at one point in my nursing career, because I was like, I just don't feel like I have meaning with my work. And I'm at a point in my life where I have 3 kids. My youngest was 2 at the time. And I just felt like I had a little more space in my life to kind of look for something that was just felt where I could feel kind of deeply. And I took 9 months off, and I occasionally would meet with this gentleman he was my spiritual director at the time. And it was really nice to take the time off from nursing. And I kind of wanted a gestation period. It was 9 months off, and it was really wonderful to spend time with my family and my kids. But also I just kind of researched other places and talked to a lot of nurses. And I found this one hospice home in Portland. And the minute I stepped in there, I was actually I was interviewing for a volunteer position at this hospice home. And as soon as I stepped in, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to want to work here more than 4 hours a week. So, it felt like I landed professionally. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I'm called, and I definitely feel like this calling keeps on kind of taking these little twists and turns that I'm not necessarily expecting, which is really fun too. I don't feel like the calling is like, oh, here you are, you're in hospice and you're just going to stay in this one place. I feel very open to working in end of life care in kind of whatever ways speaks to me. And right now I'm really lucky enough to be at a little hospice home, but I'm also, working on kind of revitalizing this other hospice home in the Portland area and doing some writing, which I never anticipated I'd do writing. And, probably like you guys, I mean, you're doing a podcast. You probably did not expect to do a podcast 2 years ago or 5 years ago. I don't know how long have you had your
5
podcast?
years.
5 years.
Five
yes.
years.
Oh my gosh.
And no,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would tell Jerry, I'm just a nurse. What do I know about this kind of stuff? Yeah, absolutely. But I think you describe yourself as an end of life educator. Not quote unquote just a nurse. That's a terrible description for us to use. I hate for anybody to put just in front of their title or their job description. Jerry's just a chaplain. It's diminishing, and there's no reason to do that because we all bring value to end of life care. And you have become an advocate. You've got a book called Some Light at the End. So tell our listeners about your book and what it has to offer readers.
So my book came up because, I've worked in an inpatient unit and I've worked in home hospice and I've worked behind the scenes of hospice. And I know that oftentimes the hospice support isn't really enough for families and patients. Nurses will come in maybe 2 or 3 hours a week. Home hospice aides come in, maybe 2 or 3 hours a week. And otherwise the family and friends have to take care of the patient. So I just really felt like there was this gap because every time I would come in and try to educate the family about, say, starting morphine for their loved one, after about 6 minutes, their eyes just kind of gloss over and it's too much information.
Right.
And you can really only take in so much information, especially when you're in crisis, when you're grieving. So I wrote this book because I wanted them to have a reference guide basically after the hospice nurse left, kind of like, okay, what was she talking about? She said something about constipation and some medications we can use. And I have a chapter on constipation in my book because they're just the kind of basics, the hospice basics about what patients need to think about, what families need to think about. It basically starts from the time somebody has a terminal diagnosis and it walks them through how to choose a hospice. It walks them through what to do if you're not ready for hospice. Maybe you need some other support in your life to make your life better and easier. It talks about, choices that you can have. It talks about patient autonomy and being really a strong advocate for yourself and what you want. And then it talks about all the symptoms that patients have, sometimes like pain and shortness of breath and anxiety and delirium and constipation. And then it talks about the end of life and what that looks like. A lot of times we have questions. How much longer? How long does this take? And, it's different for everybody, as you guys know, but basically what that process looks like, the transitioning process, the active dying process, the moment of death, and also moments after the death, which I think are equally profound. So I walk patients and families through this process because they've never been through it before. I mean, the patients obviously, and the families often, it's their first time being with somebody who's dying. So I just really wanted to offer some information so people could be less afraid and more present to the process.
So it's very interesting, I think, one of the things that you mentioned about the moments after death, because I think a lot of times the guides that we have go from symptom management, during the actively dying phase, and then the death, and the nurse is going to do this and this. You get a pronouncement. We're going to waste your meds. We're going to call the coroner or the funeral home. We don't always talk to our families about how to sit there and be there for a few minutes. This is your time. There's only one shot at this.
Yeah.
One shot. Sit with it. If this is important to you, if this is comfortable for you, sit here. We'll do it with you, I think, which is also super important. Companioning. We're going to walk alongside you with this. But to tell people, sit in this moment that's never going to come to you again.
Mm-hmm.
You will never have this particular experience in this particular space. I think that's so important to tell people it's okay to pause there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And I love offering to companion with them because it's so, it can be kind of scary for people, and people don't really, just because again, they've never done it before and they don't know if it's okay and if it's normal. And to have maybe some support. I mean, I think hospice workers are really good at kind of fading in the background. I think that's a really important skill that they all have. And so to offer space, I'll stay here with you. But if you want to sit with your husband for however long you need, it's the last time you'll be with his body. And I know that it's so jarring for families to suddenly have, and it's jarring for me as a nurse to have the body whisked away, in too quick of a time. So I think for the body itself, the person who's died, I think it brings honor and reverence to that time and that moment. And, it's like birth. I mean, we always talk about that. It's like birth. It's this divine moment in our life. We have two of them, right. Birth and death.
Exactly.
So, let's make death, just elevate it to what it really is, which it is a celebration of this person's life and your time that you've had with them. So I've had some friends and patients who's, say their father died at 2 a.m. and it's kind of a surprise. They die. They call the hospice comes, maybe cleans them up, and then calls the funeral home. And at 3 a.m., the funeral home comes, takes them out of the house, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think we just forget how jarring that can be for everybody. So yeah, I think it's just a really important time to bring ritual to that space, and to ask the chaplain to come and offer a blessing, to maybe bathe the patient, to read a poem or a passage from, their favorite holy book. I mean, I just feel like it's really a important time.
Yeah. I think it's that physical bond, right? This is the patient's, the person. We're so bad about calling people patients, right? This person, their physical presence inside this house, and we're just going to snatch it away in a second. But it should be a transition, because grief is not abrupt. This patient, their journey started way before we as hospice teams became involved. So the whole idea is a transition. That death shouldn't be like that. Yes, the moment when death occurs and the spirit of that patient is actually no longer present inside that body is a very quick instant. It's a blink. Right. But to allow that family a space there to experience a transition, mental and emotional adjustment to the fact that this has occurred instead of an abrupt, right? Because we know there's business to be done. We know that. But bring the chaplain in, make the extra effort, pull the other team members in. And of course, if you've got complicated grief, you've got multiple people in the household with different grieving needs, get your psychosocial team in there, get your spiritual team in there. I think sometimes we forget about that as nurses. I'll cop to that. I will cop to that. It's 2 a.m. Here, I'm going to get you all squared away. We'll check all the boxes you sign off on here, and here they go out the door.
Right.
When in reality, it doesn't have anything to do with me at all.
Right.
Yeah. That is not what my job is.
Right. Well, I think it would be nice if the nurse came in, offered to bathe the patient, offered to put them in something that they want them in, maybe their favorite, Oregon Ducks t-shirt or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And offered to, what else do you need? Would it be important to have, what's their religion? Would it be important to have a chaplain here? I mean, really kind of not have it be just a quick death visit, have it be, an after death ritual visit.
Yeah. The fact that we actually call it a death visit, it's really so much more than that. Maybe we should call it a grief visit. I don't know. There's so much more to it than just the death. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So, Beth, you've had many years of experience doing this. Tell us one of the more interesting or maybe moving death experiences that you've had.
I mean, I think they're all moving. I
love that you think they're all moving. That's
they are.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing to be able to gather that kind of experience through a career.
Yeah.
And I'm sure after all the ones that you have witnessed, it's going to be hard to pull just one out of all those.
That question was not on the list.
It was not on the list.
No. It's okay. It's good. It's good. I don't know. I'll tell you about one that I had that just popped into my head. It was actually I was being oriented to a new job, and I had been a hospice nurse for a long time. And the person who was orienting me, she had been a hospice nurse for about 2 years. And she told me, she said, your patient's dying now. And it was a surprise, all of a sudden he switched into actively dying mode quickly. And she ran down to the room, and I called the family and I said, he's getting close. I ran down to the room, and we both held one hand. She sat on one side, I sat on the other. We said, we've called your family. They'll be here soon. And he shook his head no. He didn't want us to call the family. And at that point, it was too late. That part was moving to me because I just realized a lot of patients may not want people there that they know, or maybe they're trying to save them or protect them from, something what they might feel is scary. And the nurse that I was working with, she and this gentleman had this amazing soul connection in that moment. I mean, it wasn't her patient, it was my patient, but she and he had this amazing back and forth, just kind of looking. She was talking at him. She was coaching him. He was watching her, and he was so connected to her. And just trusted. You can tell he was filled with relief. You could tell he trusted her. You could tell he felt safe. And she would laugh. She would tell stories. She was like, it's okay. We're with you. We're hanging in there. It's okay. You're going to be okay. And he died before his family came. And it was just such a beautiful experience for me, because this nurse who had been a hospice nurse for 2 years, she was so instinctively good about coaching this guy as he was dying. And I was also just kind of surprised and a little devastated that he didn't want his family there. But, that's part of that is my own projecting, right? Like, right. I always think people, of course they would want their family there. I would want my family all around, but he didn't want it. And it was just like such a great reminder to me that, Beth, this is not about you.
Yeah, right.
It's not at all about you. It's just 100% about what the patient wants. And, so anyway, that was one beautiful death. I mean, there are many.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Hi, this is Gabby Jimenez of the Hospice Heart. I'm excited to let you know about an upcoming series on the Heart of Hospice podcast. I'm partnering with Jerry and Helen at the Heart of Hospice to bring you a special 6-part series on grief. We'll be talking with industry experts Isabel Stencil and Lisa Paul of the Death Deck about common grief issues we're all dealing with. You'll hear information about when to seek professional help for your grief and how to navigate grief that seems to hang on for years. We're also going to discuss grieving for a loved one while you're a caregiver for someone else. There'll be tips for managing grief by journaling and how to comfort someone who is grieving. Isabel and Lisa will share insight into grief issues in children and young adults. Be sure to subscribe to the Heart of Hospice podcast so you don't miss this great series. And you can also connect with me at thehospiceheart.net. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
When you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, it can be challenging to find a funeral provider who will be a good fit for your needs. Funeralocity makes it easier. Through its Excellence Provider program, you can find funeral homes in your area, compare services and prices, and make the choice that works for you. Burial and cremation providers go through a rigorous vetting process to be accepted as an excellence provider. They commit to upholding the highest standards in business practices. Funeralocity provides full price transparency so you can compare prices and services with confidence. Funeralocity.com is a great resource for hospice professionals too. Its hospice portal offers resources for funeral planning, grief, and bereavement care, all at no charge. All you have to do is register on the Funeralocity website. Whether you're looking for the right funeral provider or supporting your patients and families as a hospice professional, Funeralocity provides all the information you need. It's the only site that has the prices of every funeral provider in America. Let Funeralocity.com help you and your family make the best choice for your funeral services. Now, back to today's episode. So I'm going to flip the script just a little bit. Because we're talking to you as a hospice professional and someone who's been in hospice for a while, Helen and I have had this conversation about the things that keep people away from hospice. And a lot of it has to do with just misinformation, but not always. What do you see as those obstacles that keeps people from choosing hospice care when they need it?
I mean, I feel like it's simple. I feel like people just don't want to die. And
it's good.
You know, they think that if they're signing on for hospice, they're okay with dying. And a lot of people aren't. And it is a tough thing to get on board with. Even my 90-year-old patients who have lived a very full life, and they're like, oh, I've been thinking about my death for a long time. I've lost all my friends. I lost my partner, 10 years ago. I'm ready. When it comes down to it, there's still a lot of work to do to get ready and to be prepared and to be okay with it. So I think that's the biggest obstacle. And I don't know what the answer is, you guys, in terms of like how to prevent that obstacle from happening. But I do think just talking about it, like you guys are doing, keeping the conversation going about dying so that people know that it's an inevitable part of our life journey. And, I do a lot of work around processing my own death and what that would be like. And it's not to say that I'll be fine with it. If I got diagnosed with a terminal illness tomorrow, I'd be pretty angry and I'd have a lot of work to still do.
Right.
But, I think that's part of it. It's just really pondering, like, what it's going to be like when you die and how do you want to live because of it? I think people are just always surprised when there's a diagnosis of any kind, no matter what your age is. So, and a lot of resistance. And I think that's okay. That's like part of the human spirit, right?
I think so. It's funny that you light on that as a hospice nurse, because my answer to that question would have been, well, people are reluctant to refer to hospice. We get the referrals too late, that sort of thing. But it is a lot on the consumer side too, because by human nature, the biggest gift we can have is to be alive, right? To be thriving and have a full and active life. And people don't want to give that up. And yet, here's a statistic for you. 100% of the people listening to this podcast and the people speaking on this podcast, 100% of us are going to die.
Now, that sounds really personal, when you put it that way.
100% of the people who are speaking on this podcast, it is personal.
It is personal.
And I think a lot of times we have a little bit of for lack of a better word, a superstitious nature about it. If you speak it, somehow talking about it makes it happen. Yeah. Dude, it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people with cancer diagnoses never really want to talk to me, because they're kind of just afraid, because I'm a hospice nurse, that it will then kind of
somehow it rubs off.
Somehow. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think people probably don't refer too soon enough. One of my jobs that I did as hospice was I was a liaison in the hospital. So I would have family conferences with patients. And And I always thought, oh, everybody wants to be on hospice. Like, I worked at this, I had this amazing hospice home that I could even offer people. And a lot of people just ended up not being ready. And they were kind of mad, that I would come in and be so,
negative. Be so negative. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And not very optimistic, and which I get. But, I think everything is planting seeds and kind of just, hospice is a process. For people to agree to hospice, it's a process. You're like, a lot of times it's just resignation and no options. And
right. They have no
other
time
choices.
Left. Right.
Right.
Well, I think it goes back to the transition thing again. It's a continuum of care. It's not supposed to be fits and starts where you get this and it's siloed, and then you get aggressive care and it's siloed, and then you get home health, and then you jump to palliative care if you're lucky enough, fortunate enough to have that. And then, eventually we will jump you to hospice care. It's supposed to be a transitional journey through the healthcare continuum. But I don't know that we're always so good at that, either as providers for healthcare or as consumers. Yeah.
That's true.
So let's talk about wishes and dreams and hopes. Because we've all got them, right? Anybody that works in the healthcare industry, especially now, but anybody who works in healthcare and those of us who work in hospice and end of life care, we have things we'd like to see changed. We have our bucket list dreams and hopes. So what would be on your wish list for the hospice industry? Where would you like us to be? What would you like us to look like in 10 years?
Okay, if I say my hopes and dreams, will you guys say your hopes and dreams?
Yes, we will do that. We'll do that with you.
So sky's the limit, right?
Ooh, yay!
Okay, so what would you like to see?
So I have lots of dreams about hospice and the end of life care, because I've seen a lot of beautiful deaths and I've seen a lot of not so beautiful deaths. And I just know it can always be better. I guess I would love for death to not be such an industry.
Very good.
I wish it were more of a natural life event that happens. I wish that patients who are in the hospital and they're dying, there's no more treatment options for them. I wish that they could stay in the hospital if they want to. And I wish we had amazing palliative care and hospice suites, kind of like birthing suites in the hospital. Because I think I've worked in the hospital where you have to, as soon as they get the hospice diagnosis and they switch over to comfort care, they try to get them out of the hospital as soon as possible because Medicare won't necessarily pay for their hospital stay. And I feel like that's a really jarring transition for patients and families. So I have kind of this dream of hospice suites in the hospital and, having it not be dependent on insurance or Medicare. I have these ideas of hospice homes just close to the hospital, like little 10-bed facilities where there's expert end-of-life care and it's a home-like environment. And patients can, leave the hospital and go right there, but it wouldn't even be leaving. They could go down a corridor and they're there. So it's just not, again, another jarring transition trying to get them out. I wish that if our hospice stayed the way it is, which I'm really thankful that we have home hospice, because I think patients dying in their home is a really beautiful opportunity for our culture to experience end of life. So I feel really lucky that that is an option. I know that the reality and the intricacies of hospice care at the end of life are unrealistic for a lot of patients and family members. And so I wish there were caregiving services that could come in for free that people wouldn't have to pay for, because again, hospice only comes into the home maybe 6 hours a week. And I know that almost every family member I've been with, they need more care and more help. It's so much physical labor and mental labor to care for somebody who's dying. And it's really, those boundaries are so across the daughter-mother boundary and the father-son boundary. And, So I wish there were more caregiving services that were part of hospice care. And I just wish there were a lot more hospice options at the end of life for people, like freestanding facilities that provide expert end of life care that are beautiful places to die. And it's not determined by how much money you have. And also I want people to be able to die outside if they want to, under like the stars or the moon or the sunshine.
I love that.
That's awesome. That's a great list.
It is. It is.
It's long. I've been thinking about this for a while. Okay. How about you guys?
Okay.
Go ahead. You go first.
Oh, I guess I would want all of those things. I love the idea of the hospice homes that are connected somehow to the hospitals. So one of the things I know about healthcare people is we are also required to have these abrupt transitions. We lose patients, we move to the next one. You have a patient that's referred to hospice in your unit, one of your patients in a bed, you get them out quickly. You never know what happens to them. Maybe you hear about an obituary. You may read an obituary weeks later, days later. Also, if you are part of a team that's been caring for a patient for a long time, say an oncologist or a pulmonology practice, and that patient gets referred out to hospice and then bang, you don't know anything else about them. Mm-hmm. I would love for us to have ways where we communicate to help our providing professionals to move through this care without accumulating this unresolved, unhealthy secondary grief. I would love to see that. So having a hospice home that's connected to a hospital, if you've just transferred a patient out there, she's writing this down. I like this. I hope that means something good. If you could know that your patient went out to one of the hospice homes that's connected to your hospital or very close to the property, and you could poke your head in and say, hey,
I know.
I'm just checking back with you.
Right.
Wondering how you did.
Human.
Yes.
Right? It brings the human element to all of this rather than these like super structured boundary, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Very siloed. And since when did healthcare people, nurses, social workers, chaplains, physicians, nurse practitioners, since when are we not human?
Right.
Since when are we not human? So to have these expectations, it's unrealistic and it's unhealthy. It's really unhealthy.
I love that idea.
I have regulatory and compliance wishes on my bucket list. Ooh. I mean, because I have a compliance background. Right. We all do. Get rid of that 6-month criteria. It's arbitrary. It causes us so much angst in healthcare. And I think it creates this stigma and boundaries on people's expectations of what they will receive inside hospice. What happens if you beat that 6-month wrap? We're not going to boot you off, but a lot of people think we will.
Yeah. Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Jerry?
Well, so that was one of mine for sure, is that we need to do away with the 6-month thing. In Britain and United Kingdom, they don't have that. They do not have that 6-month. No, they don't have it. Mm-hmm. And they have a much smoother transition when it comes from moving from palliative care into hospice care. In fact, you don't even recognize it, most people. So for them, there's not the stigma that's there with hospice. Because we are so siloed in our different categories with the different systems that we have, it becomes this shock of all of a sudden they're on hospice, where if we did away with the whole 6-month prognosis, we could transition people a lot smoother. It would be seamless almost.
There would be a flow.
Yeah, there would be this flow, but instead it's this shock. Oh, you're on hospice now. And it does not feel good. And I think people don't like the way that it feels. And consequently, we have this stigma about hospice because of it.
I think a lot of times patients and families are quote unquote not ready because they haven't been given the opportunity to be educated. And I think what we do is we do these one-offs. We need to eliminate that. Advanced care planning is not about a DNR and a medical power of attorney and durable power of attorney. Advanced care planning upstream much earlier, much younger, when you're healthy. What would you like to happen? What kind of documentation would you like to have in place? Educating your team and educating your family about how it would look, and moving forward in a way that makes some sort of sense to us to be able to digest all this information. And then one phrase I would like us to eliminate: there's nothing else we can do. That is not a thing. As a hospice nurse, I will tell you, when there are no more meds to give you, when you do not respond to anything, if you are actively dying, and there is, I have used every tool that our team has for you. If you don't even want to be touched, I will sit there and I will match my breathing to yours as you do this, because you cannot tell me there is nothing else we can do. I'm going to sit there with you if that's the only thing I can do. So I would like for people to stop saying that. Stop saying that. Jerry, stop saying it.
Okay.
There's nothing else we can do.
Yeah. There's always something.
I just pulled out my soapbox. I could feel it.
I think you did.
I love
Sorry
it.
about that.
No, I love it.
And the whole idea of hospice is not really about death anyway. It's about the quality of life, improving quality of life. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So as we come down to the end of our discussion, and man, I don't want this to end.
I know this was good.
I know,
feel like I
this is
need
so
to take a
fun.
deep breath and relax.
That's right. That's right. Okay. We are still in the midst of a pandemic. How has the pandemic changed your view of hospice care? Do you feel like the pandemic has changed us? Has it changed you? Has it changed the way that you care for people? What are your thoughts about that?
I feel like, I feel like I still feel deeply compassionate about providing end-of-life care. And, I don't feel like that piece has changed at all. I think for hospice providers, there's had to be a lot more emotional support because of visitor restrictions and limitations for who can be in the room with the patient who's dying. And, it is gut-wrenching to have a patient who only has their wife at the bedside when, her 2 kids are in the parking lot because they can't come in because of visitor restrictions. She doesn't get the support, Dad doesn't get the support that he could have. I think there's going to be a lot more just collective, grief and trauma around this time. That is a really significant part of it. I think there's also, I don't know if this really has to do with the question, but like collateral damage around COVID, the people who died, maybe not because they had COVID, but because they couldn't get to their primary care provider, or because they didn't have anybody in the hospital advocating for them, or because of inadequate staffing, or because of whatever, fill in the blank. So again, just like a lot more emotional support around this devastating time that's really changed and turned healthcare upside down. We're definitely getting back on track and things are getting better and we have more visitors able to come, thank God. But it is a pretty sensitive time.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely
I don't
true.
know if I answered your question, but
No, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Did you see anything positive that's come from maybe the changes that had to take place because of the pandemic?
First off, I'm going to say no. Really, not in healthcare. This is just my opinion, but I don't think so. There's a lot more, people are pretty fried. Staff, there's inadequate staffing. A lot of people have left. If nothing, I feel like, maybe elevating healthcare workers to the hero status, which I know is sometimes just BS rhetoric and people don't really want to hear that. But I think really opening people's eyes to the value that anybody in healthcare provides, the janitors, the CNAs, the respiratory therapists, the physicians, and their dedication. I quit during the pandemic. I stopped working for 7 months because I was, a lot of reasons, but one of them was because I was terrified and I wasn't ready and we didn't have adequate PPE. And I could, a lot of people couldn't quit their job. So, I mean, I'm just kind of amazed by people who have continued to work during the pandemic, have stayed in it, are still there, are still picking up extra shifts. I mean, it's really, there are amazing people who work in healthcare. And I'm not talking about myself because I quit, but I'm just really blown away. So I think that might be the good thing about the pandemic, is that hopefully it elevated them to kind of the status they deserve. And, hopefully I have a lot of nurse friends who have quit their jobs and they're doing travel nursing because it pays, twice the amount of money as their other job did. So maybe it will cause changes in payment structures, so, but no, I think the pandemic was just really pretty brutal in general to everybody, but that's just my simple view.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think so too.
We could talk to Beth for another hour.
I know we could. I know, absolutely.
We'll have to have you back. We will have to have you back on. That would be so much fun.
We could just talk on any other Saturday.
Well, especially since you've got something in the works. But so how can our listeners connect with you and your website and your book?
Okay. Yeah, I have a website. It's called BethKavanaugh.com. And my book, Some Light at the End, is available on Amazon. So you can get it there. And yeah, I think there's a connecting place in the website where you can just email me there.
Awesome. We'll have links in our show notes to your website so our listeners can get easy access to you. Thank you so much. I love connecting with another hospice nurse. Sorry, Jerry, you're the odd man out today.
No, we need you, Jerry. We need you.
Well, thank you.
Well,
and it has
whatever.
It has been a joy to get to meet you and to share this time with you and to obviously share the heart of what we all do. So we're grateful for that. Thank you for spending this time with us.
Thanks so much for your podcast, because I know it helps a lot of nurses out there who just want to have more resources and more support. I mean, you guys really do offer that out to our people. So thank you guys for doing the work that you do.
I have to say, I really like Beth's honesty, transparency, her willingness to show her passion for the work that she does as well.
Yeah.
There's a calling there, a love for what she does. There
definitely is. And she's got depth and warmth and obviously a lot of compassion for the community that she serves. It's so nice to talk to her. When we connect with other hospice professionals that have that kind of energy, that kind of spirit for end-of-life care, it really does encourage me when we have those conversations. It really does.
Yeah. So we really got into the conversation talking about the wishes. What are our wishes for hospice in the future?
We could have Beth back on, and that would be a whole nother episode, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would be. It would be. And I was a little flabbergasted. She kind of turned the tables on us and asked us, okay, so what are your wishes?
That's right. Turnabout's fair play, so I guess that was okay. And I mean, we do have things that we would like to change, things that we would like to see evolve and have the industry move into. 10 years from now, are we going to look the same? Good Lord, I hope not.
True. So for you, our listeners, we would like to find out, what are your wishes for hospice? What kind of things do you dream that might be good for our future in hospice? Send us an email. Let us know. Let's have this conversation.
Yeah, I like that idea. You can connect with Beth on her website, BethKavanaugh.com, and it's Beth, B-E-T-H, and Kavanaugh is C-A-V-E-N-A-U-G-H. You can find her on LinkedIn as well. She's just an awesome end-of-life professional. I'm so glad we got connected with Beth.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of Hospice. I'm Jerry Finter here with Helen Bauer. Because we know your hospice journey is 24/7, you can always find us at theheartofhospice.com. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening and leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts.
To connect with us, just send an email to host@theheartofhospice.com. You can also find us on social media. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.